Hi everybody, this is Todd Olthoff from ToddOlthoff.com coming back at you with another screencast. And this week we're going to take a look at the caching service that's built into Maverick's server. Now the caching service allows you to actually take things that you would normally download from the Mac App Store and create a copy of those updates and those downloads on your server so that all of your clients in your network will then go to your server to get those updates instead of downloading their own separate updates onto each of your different Mac computers. So this way it saves bandwidth inside your network and allows you to only have to download it once, and then from there everybody gets their updates from your server. Now the caching service does integrate with the Mac App Store, and so anything that you would download from the Mac App Store is what would be caught with the caching service. Now in a previous screencast we talked about software update and talked about using that to get your updates. And so what I thought I'd do is compare the caching server with software update. Now one of the things you can do is you can run these two services simultaneously. You don't have to only run one or the other. You can run them together, so I just wanted to let you know that. But let's talk about the differences between these two. The first is that software update only caches Mac updates, whereas the caching service will cache not only Mac updates, but also any purchases you have on the Mac App Store, both for Macs and iOS devices. So anything that you've purchased there would be cached. Also, software update will allow you to manually configure your client, so you have to actually manually configure each client to use it. We talked about how to do that in the software update screencast that I did. But with the caching server, all you have to do is be on the same network as the server that has the caching service running on it. So there's no configuration for your clients. They will automatically look for a caching server on your network and then tap into it to look for their updates and downloads. So that's kind of nice that it's got zero configurability. Now, the other thing is that software update will download all of your updates when it's fired up, whereas the caching server will only download updates when someone has requested it. So when one of your client machines downloads a program, or when it requests an update, that update will be downloaded and saved on the server. It won't just automatically download everything that you've got. So it does manage it that way. Software update, though, does allow you to have more client management, so you can determine which things are downloaded and which things are enabled, whereas in the caching service, pretty much everything that you've got on the Mac App Store that you've purchased will be cached, and so there isn't any client management on that. It just works that way. So one of the ways that I could conceive of you kind of using these two together is you might want to use software update for some of your legacy software, things that might not be in your Mac App Store. So if you've got any Macs that are under 10.8, you would use the software update, and then you can use the caching service for everything else. And I would also use the software update service in a managed mode. That way you don't have duplicates of some of these updates across your two services, and that will make it a little easier to manage. Okay, so now in looking at the caching service, let's go ahead and take a look at the different settings we've got here. You'll notice we have the similar setup that we have in most of our services here in OS X server, and that's a status and permissions area. Again, the status shows right now that it's offline. You can also edit permissions. And like we've seen before, you can have the content for clients connecting from all networks, only some local, only some networks, or you can serve clients matching these clients with these public addresses, only the server's network or on other networks. Again, in most cases, you just want to leave this alone because you'll want it on your local network, and the caching service will work fine because it's automatically configured. But if you wanted to change that or had a unique situation where you needed to do that, you could change it here. So let's go ahead and cancel and leave that alone. Now down here we've got our cache location, and so you can choose where to have that hosted. Now I would recommend hosting it on either an external drive, or maybe if you've got a second internal drive inside your server, to do that, because this caching data can take up a lot of space. Remember, it's downloading these updates to your server and then having clients get it from there, and so you could run out of your main hard drive space in a hurry, especially if you're using your server for other things. So I'd recommend changing the location, which is really easy to do right here in the application. You just click on change location, and then you choose the drive you want to use. So in my case, I'm going to use the Drobo because I got a lot of space on there. I'm going to say choose. It's going to say, you sure you want to move the data there to the new location? I'll say continue. And so now you'll see it's copying the files over and changing the service data location. You can see now it's on the Drobo, and you can see it even changed the space available information down below here as well. And so that's where that information goes. Now, if you wanted to take a look at that, and if I just pull up the Finder here, you'll notice it puts it in a folder called Library Server and then your caching data. And so that's where your caching data is going to be stored when you download it, in case you're ever looking for it. Let's go ahead and just put that down here. Get back in the app. Now, I can also choose the cache size. So if I don't want it taking up my entire drive, maybe I've got a lot of people hitting it and I just want to limit it to a certain size, all I've got to do is move this slider, and you can see I can determine how much space I want to have taken up here with my server. And so, in this case, maybe let's say I want to do 2 terabytes. And now you can see down here it shows how many terabytes are available based on what I set the size at. So that's how you set that up. Now, once we start using data, we'll start to see this bar fill up with information down here. And I can always click the reset button. And in fact, if I just hit this reset button, I can reset the cache content. So it's going to delete all the downloaded content that I've got in there. So if I ever wanted to start over, instead of having to reconfigure everything, I just hit the reset button and it'll clear out all the data that's in my cache. So I'm going to cancel that for right now. So now that we've got everything all set up, we're going to go ahead and throw the switch to turn on the service. And you can see right now it says it's available. Devices on my local network are automatically going to use this service. Everything's set up and ready to go. So what I'm going to do, let me download some updates and things, and let's see how they show up here in the caching app. Okay, here I am back on the Caching Services app, and you can see here that I just downloaded, a few things. You can see now it shows that I've used 51 kilobytes of 2 terabytes. And sometimes this might take a little while to update as you do your downloads. If I just hover over it, you can see that that 51 kilobytes comes from iCloud. As you do different things from different services, it'll show up here, in terms of maybe what was from the Mac App Store, those sorts of things that'll all, kind of fill in here. And then it'll give you a running total of how much space you've used of your designated space that you put on here. So that gives you an idea of how the caching service works. Again, it's a great service that's built into OS X Server, and so if you've got bandwidth issues, this is really a great service to use. I highly recommend it. And you can see here, even as I'm sitting here, it's starting to update the amount that I've got in there. So you'll see it'll do this over time. But it is a great service, and I'd highly recommend using it, again, especially, like I said, if you've got bandwidth issues. So that's all I have for this week. I'll be back at you next week with another screencast to help you learn how to do more things with your Mac.